Thank you to all of you for your presentations. I have a couple questions. Want to start with Miss Lindy Suggs. So, what I've learned in the last several weeks in talking to folks from my area when it comes to these housing dollars, and I appreciate the presentation and the efforts that have been made for dollars to go to rural communities and these disadvantaged communities. I just want to read some statistics about my region, the San Joaquin Valley. So the San Joaquin Valley share of both the RENA and population is about 11% of the state's total. Yet in many of the state's housing funding programs, the Valley gets a far smaller share of funds. For example, 6.2% of the last 3 runs of HSC funding came to our Central Valley. 4.5% of the state light tech credits since 2023, and only 2.2% of CIDLAC bond allocations necessary for the 4% light tech credits over that same period. And then not a single dollar of MHP funding in round 3 of the multifamily supernova went to the Valley. We obviously know just by one example of the city of Mendota, and I have many city of Mendotas, as Tom Kalasha knows. And so for me, this issue is very, very important. And that's why I want to thank Chair Haney for taking the time to highlight what is happening in rural communities like the ones that I represent. And so obviously, all of these programs define and allocate funds to geographic and rural regions differently, with the Valley often split or lumped up with other parts of the state, as we heard from Tom, which I think significantly disadvantage our community. So to maybe just kind of the work that the department is doing, what efforts are being taken or can be taken to maybe standardize these categories, and to ensure an equitable awarding of funds to our region who also desperately needs these funding allocations?
I think that's a really great question. A lot of these issues that have been discussed today really aren't new issues to the department, that we're actively engaged in this space. And, today while I discussed some of the modifications to existing programs to kind of address some of these challenges, and we've made some great progress, there's still a lot of work to be done, of course. Right now, as everyone's abundantly aware, a lot of effort and thought and strategies being put into the housing agency reorganization and also into AB 519, and a lot of great minds in these working groups and conversations, and leaders kind of putting their heads together to figure out the best way, most efficient way to create affordable housing in California. So I think there'll be lots of opportunities for input there, and I've been taking great notes today because we've heard a lot of really thoughtful suggestions about things, different ways that we might be able to do things that could result in a more equitable deployment of funds across the state. But I think a lot of that work just remains to be done within that new housing agency reorg and some of these other conversations being had around the alignment of programs across state agencies.